Hello everyone, this is the Historiographer. Today, we will explore the life and times of the man that has become a symbol of national resistance against colonialism and fascism, the man known as the Lion of the Desert and the leader of the martyrs, a man who has forever ingrained his name in history due to his 2 decades-long guerrilla resistance against Italian colonialism in Libya, therefore directly enraging Benito Mussolini himself. Meet Omar al-Mukhtar. Little information is recorded on Mukhtar's early life, and sources differ on his birth date, with some stating that he was born in 1858 while others in 1862. Nevertheless, al-Mukhtar's birth date location is known, as he was born near Tobruk in the then region of Ottoman Cyrenaica, to an Arab tribe of the Banu Hilal. His father died in the Hajj pilgrimage while en route to Mecca, hence leaving the young child orphaned and essentially with no income. He was, however, at the behest of his dying father, subsequently adopted by a sheikh called Sheikh Hassan, belonging to the Sunusi Sufi reformist movement. This movement, a de facto independent movement under nominal Ottoman control, was prominent in Ottoman Libya, Western Egypt, as well as parts of Central and West Africa, and had the ultimate aim of uniting these aforementioned regions via Islamic teachings in order to expel the ever-encroaching Western colonial powers from Africa by means of struggle, or jihad. While al-Mukhtar was educated early on in the local mosques and kutab, he impressed his teachers by his quick wit and memorization abilities. He was therefore sent to continue his studies at the Senussi University in the capital of the Senussi movement, a city called Jahbub near the Egyptian border. There, Omar stayed for 8 years, learning the Quran, the Hadith, history, lineages, and the environment surrounding him at the hands of seasoned scholars. He therefore became an imam, a teacher of the Quran and the Hadith, and naturally, he joined the Senussi movement. During the years that Omar al-Mukhtar spent studying in Jahbub, he was able to gain a strong reputation amongst the sheikhs of the Senussi movement. That reputation was so strong that the leader of the Senussis, Muhammad al-Mahdi al-Sunusi, decided to take Omar al-Mukhtar with him in the year 1895 on his journey from Al-Jahbub to Kufra in the southeast of the Libyan desert. After this trip, Omar al-Mukhtar went with the Senussi leader to western Sudan. In Sudan, al-Mukhtar was appointed as a sheikh of a town called Ain Qalaq, gaining valuable administrative experience. However, 2 years later, al-Mahdi al-Senussi appointed him in 1897 as a sheikh of another town called Al-Qusur in northeastern Cyrenaica. His close relationship with the Senussi led him to acquire the title of Sayyid, therefore becoming known as Sidi Omar, which was only bestowed upon the well-known Senussi sheikhs. When the French occupation of Chad began in the year 1900, the French became hostile to the Senussi movement as it presented a bulwark against their expansionist dreams in Central Africa. Indeed, the movement mobilized itself against the French and sent thousands of fighters to Chad to fight French expansionism. During his fight in Chad, al-Mukhtar developed his tactical skills in guerrilla and desert warfare against the much better equipped French forces. This would prove critical for the Libyan teacher in the future. Muhammad al-Mahdi al-Senussi died in 1902, and he was succeeded by Ahmed Sharif al-Senussi. The new leadership summoned him to return to Cyrenaica. By 1906, he was appointed for the second time as a sheikh of the town of Al-Qusur, and he managed it so well that the Ottomans congratulated him on his ability to bring stability to a region rife with instability. Al-Mukhtar was also chosen to settle tribal disputes, and he remained in this position for 8 years until the pivotal year of 1911. During the period before 1911, the teacher fought the armies of the British Mandate on the Egyptian-Libyan border, in the areas of Bardiya and Saloum, especially in the Battle of Saloum in 1908. This battle ended with the fall of the town in the hands of the British Mandate over Egypt. As always, however, al-Mukhtar acquired valuable military experience during his fight against the colonial British forces. On the 29th of September 1911, fueled by the desire of European colonial expansion to rival its European counterparts, Italy declared war on the Ottoman Empire with the aim of occupying Ottoman domains in the Mediterranean. Italian forces quickly landed in Tripoli as well as in Derna, Tobruk, and Benghazi. all three cities in Cyrenaica close to al-Mukhtar's town of Al-Qusur. At this time, Umar al-Mukhtar was in the city of Al-Kufra in the heart of the Libyan desert. When he learned of the news of the Italian invasion, he returned quickly to Al-Qusur to recruit its people to resist the Italians, hence starting what would become a 2 decades-long resistance campaign against Italian forces. The Libyan teacher turned guerrilla fighter succeeded in rallying a few hundred fighters. Al-Mukhtar used the rugged terrain of the Green Mountain region in Cyrenaica to his advantage. Furthermore, the guerrilla fighter began to establish contact with Ottoman Turkish soldiers led by Enver Pasha and Kemal Atatürk, as well as Senussi fighters who had left their struggle in Chad to focus against Italy's invasion. In total, the number of Italians amounted to at most 100,000 troops equipped with tanks and aircraft, which was the first use of aircraft in modern war, against nearly 20,000 Libyan and 7,000 Ottoman soldiers, mostly comprised of infantrymen but also of mobile cavalry. Given the futility of conventional warfare against the technologically superior Italians, mobile guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run attacks were used to a devastating effect on Italian soldiers. Indeed, while Italian forces had control of the major cities, the countryside remained untamed, where Libyan fighters hid, patiently waiting for an opportunity to strike. However, in 1912, the First Balkan War broke out, a war which was disastrous to say the least for the Ottomans. Stretched too thin, the Ottoman Empire was forced to conclude a peace treaty with the First Treaty of Lausanne in October of 1912, thus abandoning Umar al-Mukhtar and the Senussis to face the full might of the Italian forces. Despite the aforementioned setbacks in Part 1, where the Ottomans surrendered Libya to Italy in 1912, thereby leaving al-Mukhtar alone, Umar al-Mukhtar remained in command of the fight against the Italians in the entirety of Cyrenaica and eastern Libya until the arrival of the Senussi leader Ahmed al-Sharif al-Senussi to the city of Derna in 1913. It was here that Umar al-Mukhtar became the second in command to al-Sharif. Al-Sharif was an energetic man. Not only did he direct his fight against the Italians, but in 1915 he also attacked the British-controlled Sultanate of Egypt due to Ottoman pressure, especially after the Ottoman Empire's invasion of Sinai. Ultimately, this signaled the start of the British campaign against the Senussis in World War I. Returning to the fight against Italy, the early years of the First World War were the most violent. Indeed, Senussi raids under Umar al-Mukhtar focused on the Derna region in eastern Libya. During his raids against the Italians, Umar al-Mukhtar constantly changed locations, moving mostly in his base of operations in the Green Mountain in Cyrenaica. In each raid, he used to take with him 100 to 300 men mounted on cavalry and armed with light rifles, only to withdraw quickly. A skilled negotiator, al-Mukhtar consistently recruited from the tribes of eastern Libya. However, during this period, the Libyan resistance faced major setbacks due to the Italian takeover of most of the countryside in central and northern Cyrenaica by mid-1914 as part of their wider invasion of Libya. Nevertheless, the Lion of the Desert remained steady, and he continued to use his guerrilla warfare experience acquired in Chad and in Libya, as well as his previous knowledge of the geography and desert, knowledge acquired in his university years in Jarboub. Italian soldiers who were not familiar with desert wars and were not accustomed to desert heat were somewhat easy prey to the lone fox. However, the knot increasingly tightened on the Senussis and al-Mukhtar, who were now boxed in more and more in eastern Libya, not only by the Italian army, but also by the advancing British army due to the started war against Britain. Enter Idris as-Senussi, who became the de facto leader of the movement in 1960. The new leader Idris, a pragmatic man, made an alliance with the British Empire, hence halting all attacks against territories in the British Mandate over Egypt. With this alliance, Idris was able to use the British as intermediaries to broker negotiations with Italy. Indeed, by April 1916, the first negotiations with Rome took place. Crucially, however, 1 year later, the Akrama Agreement was signed. This agreement allowed both parties to coexist in peace. The Senussi were also permitted to free trade with the coast and with Egypt, and Idris' rule was recognized in parts of southeastern Libya. In exchange, Idris was to renounce allegiance to the Ottoman Empire, release Italian POWs, cease hostilities against the Allies in Britain, as well as, crucially, to disband Senussi forces. Naturally, the last clause angered the Libyan resistance under al-Mukhtar, who probably refused to comply with the orders of Idris. This is proven by the fact that Idris did not fulfill this last term, either due to his unwillingness to disband his forces or simply due to his inability to control his fighters. The reason is probably the latter, as Idris was even armed by Italy and Britain to contain Libyan resistance fighters. Post-World War I, Italy was left in a fractured domestic landscape, mostly angered by what many Italians saw as a mutilated victory, as Italy was not given all of its claims. As a result, Italy was in no shape for another military confrontation, giving rise to a lull in hostilities. For example, to ease tensions with Libyans, Italy issued major decrees in 1919. These decrees, known as Legge Fondamentali, or fundamental laws, brought about a compromise by which all Libyans were accorded the right to a joint Libyan-Italian citizenship and more autonomy to the provinces of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica. The Senussi leader Idris was content with this arrangement, and Idris even visited Rome as part of the celebrations to mark the promulgation of the settlement. It is unknown what was the reaction of al-Mukhtar to all of these political changes, but what is known is that al-Mukhtar vehemently opposed the Al-Rajma Accord in 1920, which gave Idris the title of Emir of Cyrenaica in exchange for his full submission to Italy. Furthermore, Idris was once again ordered to disband the Senussi army, but he did not comply, souring tensions between Idris and Rome. Certainly, the 1920 agreement infuriated Omar al-Mukhtar and the rest of the sheikhs and leaders who vowed to continue their jihad against Italy. To pressure Emir Idris, Libyan resistance leaders pledged allegiance to him as their leader on the sole condition that this allegiance is to be for jihad against the Italians only. Idris had no choice but to accept the Pledge of Allegiance. While the Emir was also made Emir of Tripolitania by request of Tripolitanian leaders in 1922, Idris feared that Italy, under its new fascist leader Benito Mussolini, would militarily retaliate against the Senussi order due to the order's growing power. Therefore, Idris went to exile in the newly established Kingdom of Egypt, from which he would guide the Libyan resistance despite the previous rapprochement efforts. After the departure of Emir Idris, responsibility of the entire leadership fell on Omar al-Mukhtar. Truly, he became the leader of the jihadist movement in the Green Mountain region and began collecting money and weapons, inciting the tribes, as well as presiding over the raids and attacks against the Italians in Cyrenaica. In March 1923, al-Mukhtar traveled to Egypt to present to Emir Idris the result of his work, as well as to receive the necessary instructions, where he was able to cross the Egyptian border and meet with Idris in Cairo. It was in Cairo that Italian agents attempted to contact Omar al-Mukhtar, where they offered to provide him amnesty and a luxurious salary in exchange of giving up arms. The Italians repeated their offer to al-Mukhtar several times, even after his departure from Egypt and his return to Cyrenaica, but he refused each time and insisted on jihad to fight his homeland's occupiers. In any case, al-Mukhtar had agreed with Emir Idris while he was in Egypt on the details of the plans that the Mujahideen should follow against the Italians. Further, it was agreed that from Egypt, money, arms, and supplies would be sent to the Libyan resistance fighters. The Italians were following the movements of Omar al-Mukhtar and were waiting for the first opportunity to eliminate him to put down the revolution. During his return from Egypt to Cyrenaica by mid-1923, he and his companions passed by a place called Bir al-Ghabi. The Italians, however, were waiting for the now nearly 65-year-old fighter, where Italian armed vehicles attacked at the earliest opportunity and surrounded them. A firefight ensued, and all but one armored vehicle were immobilized. In the year 1923, after the Italian colony of Libya had lived for several years in relative calm with weakness in Italian control, The Italian government, under the new leader/dictator Benito Mussolini, a fascist-fueled hardliner, decided to radically change its policy towards Libya. Long were the days of Italian deals with the Senussi. Instead, Mussolini declared that all deals were to be null and void, and pursued a militaristic policy to crush all Libyan resistance. Truly, the period between 1924 and 1925 witnessed many skirmishes and bloody battles between the revolutionaries and the Italian forces, and the Mujahideen expanded their military activity in the Green Mountain. The name of Omar al-Mukhtar shone as a brilliant leader who mastered hit-and-run tactic and enjoyed great influence amongst the tribes. Indeed, the Bedouin tribesmen began to join the ranks of the Mujahideen in large numbers, and the tribes took the initiative to provide Libyan resistance with supplies, equipment, and weapons they needed, on top of the supplies arriving from Egypt. However, in 1924-25, the Italian governor of Cyrenaica, Ernesto Bombelli, pursued a new tactic of attacking and following al-Mukhtar to his hideouts, resulting in huge setbacks for the Libyan resistance. Ever the flexible guerrilla, Mukhtar quickly modified his own tactics. Indeed, al-Mukhtar undertook massive reorganization efforts. For example, Mukhtar organized a higher advisory council amongst Libyan resistance, headed by himself and including various sheikhs and notables of the tribes of eastern Libya. There was also a system of military ranks similar to the Ottoman one, which included promotions for those with outstanding achievements and deeds. These efforts resulted in containing the Italian wave, as the new Italian governor of Cyrenaica, Attilio Tiruzzi, appointed in 1926, acknowledged in his published memoirs titled Green Cyrenaica that the tactic of pursuing the rebels and continuously striking them in the Green Mountain had exhausted the Italian forces, which made it an effectively useless method. This style of warfare very much continued, as on March 28, 1927, the Libyan guerrillas clashed with the Italian forces in a fierce battle known as the Battle of Rahiba. Shockingly, the Italians suffered a stunning defeat. That defeat was the straw that broke the camel's back, as the Italian government in Rome was no longer able to accept any military setbacks after its army appeared in a comical shape in front of the rest of the armies of Europe. As such, Italy gathered its forces composed of regular Italian, Eritrean, and even Libyan local teams supported by armored cars and tanks. In addition to these preparations, the Italian Air Force was launched from its base to hunt down the Lion of the Desert once and for all. On the other hand, the number of resistance fighters ranged from 1,000 to 2,000 fighters for the impending battle. What was missing for the Italians was the location of al-Mukhtar. Italy learned through its spies the location of the Mujahideen in a place called Shafatir in Cyrenaica. The result was a bloody battle where many Libyan fighters lost their lives. But once again, Italian forces were ultimately forced to withdraw. In the grand scheme of things, Italy tactically succeeded in essentially encircling al-Mukhtar in the Green Mountain area of Cyrenaica, barring the remaining stronghold of Al-Kufra in the Libyan desert. Military actions nearly stopped for the year 1928, after Mussolini's government realized that there was no point in continuing military operations against the Mujahideen without a major tactical overhaul. Italian leader Benito Mussolini is reported to have said, "We are not fighting wolves, but we are fighting lions who bravely defend their country. The war will be long." By late 1928, Attilio Tiruzzi, governor of Cyrenaica, as well as the minister of the colonies and the governor of Tripolitania, resigned. As such, the Marshal Pietro Badoglio was appointed as ruler of Libya. Badoglio assumed his duties at the beginning of January 1929. The new ruler followed a policy based on gaining time to strengthen existing Italian strongholds. Once powerful enough, Badoglio planned to crush Libyan resistance in a single wave of attack. Thus, for nearly 7 months, from February to October 1929, negotiations were undertook between the Libyan fighter and Italy. Marshal Pietro Badoglio succeeded in concluding a compromise with Mukhtar, a compromise incorrectly described by the Italians as his complete submission. Recognizing the futility of negotiations with the Italians and suspecting that the Italians simply aimed to gain time, at the end of October 1929, al-Mukhtar denounced the compromise and re-established a unity of factions among Libyan forces, saying, "Let every fighter know that the purpose of the Italian government is to sow strife and intrigues between us, to tear us apart so that they may prevail." The apparent failures of Badoglio's policy propelled Mussolini, who was now growing increasingly impatient, to appoint General Rodolfo Graziani as vice governor of Cyrenaica and commander of the Italian forces in Libya. Graziani, an uncompromising fascist commander known for his callous measures, arrived in Benghazi on March 7, 1930, surrounded by an aura of heroism after he met Mussolini in Rome. The latter praised him and reportedly gave Graziani a carte blanche to crush Libyan resistance, unencumbered by the restraints of either Italian or international law. Graziani hence immediately began adopting a ruthless policy of suppression. For example, he decided to impose the death penalty on anyone who cooperates or communicates with the revolutionaries. He also imprisoned most of the sheikhs and notables of Benghazi and Derna, confiscated property for the slightest suspicion, and he even announced a bounty for anyone capturing Omar al-Mukhtar, dead or alive. A massive offensive by Graziani in 1930 against Mukhtar's forces succeeded in capturing the city of Kufra in the Libyan desert, which was the last stronghold outside of Cyrenaica. This offensive notoriously involved the use of chemical warfare by the Italian Air Force against the Bedouin rebels in the desert, and it earned Graziani the title the Butcher of Fezzan. Yet, Libyan resistance weathered the storm. Graziani, in full accord with Badoglio and Benito Mussolini, hence initiated a plan to break the Libyan Mujahideen. The plan was simple: to completely annihilate the population of the Green Mountain in Cyrenaica by creating concentration camps to prevent any further collaboration and tearing the resistance apart. Indeed, on 20 June 1930, Badoglio wrote to Graziani, saying, "I do not hide the significance and seriousness of this measure, which might result in the ruin of the subdued population. But now the course has been set, and we must carry it to the end, even if the entire population of Cyrenaica must perish." Nevertheless, al-Mukhtar continued resisting. Faced with an increasingly unfavorable situation, Omar al-Mukhtar moved his base of operations closer to the Egyptian border. This was so that he could receive supplies and ammunition at a faster rate. A determined Graziani decided to establish barbed wire along the entirety of the Libyan-Egyptian border, costing the Italian government an outrageous sum. But in return, it led to the desired result, depriving the revolutionaries of the much-needed supplies that were coming to them from Egypt. By October 1930, the Italians were able to clash with the Mujahideen in a major battle, after which they found Omar al-Mukhtar's glasses and his well-known white horse in the field of battle. Afterwards, for nearly a year, al-Mukhtar consistently eluded capture. On September 11, 1931, Omar al-Mukhtar was ambushed by Libyan and Eritrean colonial soldiers in the village of Slonta in Cyrenaica after he was spotted by Italian reconnaissance. Following a brief clash, Omar al-Mukhtar's horse was wounded and fell to the ground. His nephew offered him his horse, but he was killed in the process. Witnessing his nephew's death by a Libyan Arab colonial soldier, a shocked Omar was captured by the Italians, where he scorned the Arab traitor. A telegram from Slonta conveyed the news to the governor of Libya, Badoglio, and Lieutenant General Graziani, to their disbelief, stating, "Omar al-Mukhtar has been arrested." After photos were taken with the captive, Omar al-Mukhtar was transferred by sea to a prison in Benghazi, where he was placed in a small, private cell isolated from all political prisoners and under heavy guard. Graziani arrived in Benghazi on September 14, 1931, and he announced the convening of a special court the following day. On the morning of that day, before the trial, Graziani wished to speak with Omar al-Mukhtar. Graziani records the dialogue in his memoirs between him and the Libyan resistance fighter, beginning by asking, "Why did you fight so hard and continuously against the fascist government?" Al-Mukhtar replied, "For the sake of my religion and my country." To which the Italian general said, "What did you think you'd get to?" It is here that al-Mukhtar famously responded, "Nothing but expelling you because you are usurpers. As for war, it is imposed on us, and victory is only from God. We are a people that do not surrender. Either we win or die." At 5 o'clock in the evening of September 15, 1931, the trial of Omar al-Mukhtar took place in the old parliament building of Cyrenaica. After questioning al-Mukhtar, the public prosecutor stood up and asked for the Libyan to be sentenced to death. The lawyer entrusted to defend al-Mukhtar A young Italian officer of the rank of captain named Roberto Lontano tried to spare the life of the 73-year-old sheikh. He thus demanded that he be sentenced to life imprisonment due to his old age, arguing that this is a harsher punishment than execution. However, the public prosecutor intervened, asking the president of the court to prevent the captain from completing his pleading. In a rare demonstration of sympathy coming from fascist officers, Captain Lontano went above and beyond to defend al-Mukhtar. He argued that the Lion of the Desert was simply fighting for his country, and he denied the legitimacy of the charge of treason, as al-Mukhtar never submitted to Italy. He therefore justified the right of the defendant to be considered a prisoner of war under international law. Interestingly, Lontano was later arrested and punished with 10 days in prison, as he was, quote-unquote, guilty of having overstepped his defense. In any case, al-Mukhtar was sentenced to death by hanging. Upon hearing the verdict, Omar al-Mukhtar said, "The verdict is only for God. We belong to God, and to Him we shall return." On the morning of the day following the trial, Wednesday, September 16, 1931, at the Soulouk concentration camp, thousands of Libyan fighters and notables were brought to witness the execution of their leader. Al-Mukhtar was brought handcuffed, and at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, he was handed over to the executioner. Minutes later, he was hanged and passed away, sending shockwaves throughout the Arab world, especially in neighboring Egypt, which published news of his death in newspapers. To this day, al-Mukhtar's legacy lives on, as many Libyans and Arabs revere the Lion of the Desert as a freedom fighter and an ardent revolutionary. Italy tried to benefit from the killing of Omar al-Mukhtar, but to no avail, as Libyan resistance continued until it was finally extinguished 2 years later. As for Libya, Italy lost its fourth shore during World War II, where it withdrew from the colony completely by 1943. Libya would later become an independent kingdom under Idris as-Senussi in 1951. Years later, a famous colonel would overthrow Idris, a colonel known to history as Muammar al-Gaddafi. But that is a story for another time. As always, subscribing to the channel is the best way to spread history. This has been the Historiographer, and for now, see you in the next video.